WCNC TV Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide and the tough questions get asked and answered.
Good Sunday morning. Thanks for joining us here on Flashpoint. I'm Ben Thompson. Joining me today, State House Representatives Christy Clark, directly to my right, and Jeff McNeely. Thank you both for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
First up, more drama in Raleigh this past week, all involving that surprise override vote of the governor's budget veto. A few weeks ago, the House vote was 55-9, with most of the Democrats missing. You know the story. Democrats say they didn't expect a voting session that day, as the governor and other state leaders were spending the morning doing a number of things. Some say they were honoring first responders on the anniversary of 9/11. Speaker Moore says no announcement was ever made that there would be no votes held that morning. Since I do have two state representatives here this morning, I want to start to get an explanation. Representative Clark, we'll start with you about your explanation about what exactly happened.
Yeah, so on Tuesday evening after the session, Speaker Jackson, or Leader Jackson, heard from Representative David Lewis that there would be no votes. This was done not from the dais, but in a private conversation off to the side. And that information was conveyed to the House caucus Democrats, and so we all made plans for the next morning based on that information. It was like, as you said, some of us, at least one person was at a 9/11 memorial, some people were dropping kids off at school, some were at work, all doing different things. And so when the session began, the people who were there, about 12 Democrats, very quickly realized something was about to happen. Representative Sane made a motion, it happened about 55 seconds. The vote was passed on the veto override, and as you saw, like, chaos ensued on the House floor as that was happening.
Your version of what happened, I assume it's slightly different.
Well, we had no privy to the conversation that Representative Jackson and Representative Lewis had. That was never told to any of us. Yeah. Last thing we heard from the dais that day was, actually twice, that there would be votes the next day. And we're told all the time, in caucus, whatever, be in your seats. Be in your seats. Not just that morning. Matter of fact, we really didn't get any kind of special notice that morning to be in our seats, but we're just always told, be there. You got to understand, we have 65 Republicans and 55 Democrats right now in the House, and that's our makeup. Anytime we fall down to 55, 54 Republicans on the floor, we're kind of in a dangerous area, actually. Sure. Matter of fact, and Christian probably remembers this, I think it was the last week of July, we actually got down to about 53 on one day. And Speaker was not there, Tim Moore. I think that day, I'm pretty sure David Lewis was the acting Speaker of the House, and some stuff started to happen. Luckily, it was near the end of the session, and we were able to adjourn and get out, as we say. And so no motions were made or whatever. There was attempts by the Democrat side to make some motions that day. So the morning that this happened, there were just 55 Republicans there out of 65. So if we were really planning something, you'd think we'd have got our rear end there ourselves. But there were 55. There were probably a dozen Democrats, give or take, that morning. We actually thought something was up ourselves. We were like, where are they? Yeah. You know, are they all outside waiting to rush in here because we're at 55 and they're 55, and we, you know, I'm a counter. Matter of fact,
you have to be in these situations.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
I'm new. I've only been there since July, but I've learned real quick that being a county commissioner, we had 5, and if you couldn't count to 3, you didn't get anywhere. So you can't count to a majority. The same with us. We don't get anywhere. So I was counting in the morning, and I wasn't sure we had 55 because we were moving around too. Not everybody gets in their seat like they're supposed to, like grade school. And so we kept thinking, they're outside, they're ready to run in here, and there's going to be a motion or something's going to happen because why aren't they here? And it probably took close to 10 minutes for us to really do the vote, maybe 8, something like that, because we were kind of like, okay, and we were checking to make sure everything was right and confirmed back and forth with the clerk. And everything, since the last thing was said on the floor was we would have votes today, we got on with it.
So listening to your interpretation of what happened, you all weren't underhanded in any way. You were prepared.
We really weren't well prepared. Okay. My biggest fear that morning was once it started, Because look, I've been waiting 2 months, just like she has and all of us. We basically gave up 2 months of our life more than we kind of figured on. Not that we don't do our job, we do. But, we've been wanting for this moment.
Sure. All right, let me get you to chime back in.
Yeah.
He says, maybe not prepared, but he says it was not underhanded.
Yeah, so, I, don't want to point too many fingers, but I feel like what did happen was that there was a realization that a loophole had opened because there was an announcement made from the dais and Speaker Moore had not sent out an email about there being no votes. And I do believe that there had been an awareness that this loophole had opened. They were planning to take advantage of it. And we know that a couple legislators had sent out emails to a few different people who lived a little bit farther away and asked them to come in, make sure they were in their seats. And there was some talk about us introducing some kind of motion or bill relating to redistricting, which actually wasn't even possible. There was no bill on the calendar related to that subject, so it would not have been in order to do such a thing. One thing that we've been saying on the Democratic side is that if Republicans looked over and saw that we weren't there and they knew something was wrong, they should have realized something was wrong. And they used that to take advantage of us versus saying, hey, something weird's going on, why aren't they all here? Because we've been there all summer long. We missed summer vacations and people came in directly after breast cancer surgery and left people in the hospital and everything. So they knew we would be there, and it was abnormal that we weren't.
What do you say to people who say, you know what, they were just being smart?
Well, it's strategery for sure. It's very clever to take advantage of that opportunity.
Luck. It was luck.
Well, luck, smart, taking advantage. You can put whatever word you want on it. But for sure, it was, an opportunity open, and they took advantage of it. And it was, pretty detrimental to the institution.
Yeah, and I'm sure some relationships within the building. Okay, we wanted to get that account first. Now, this past week, the minority leader of the North Carolina House, Darren Jackson, called upon top House Republicans to take a lie detector test. That's the point we're at now, folks, to prove they didn't deliberately deceive Democrats about the budget override vote. Jackson says he was lied to about the override vote back on September 11th, provided results of a lie detector he took last week, which he says proves he truly believed there was no votes that morning. Speaker Moore reiterated that House rules were followed. Take a listen.
The majority cannot be trusted, then the public deserves to know it. I believe that Republican House leaders have consistently lied for 2 weeks now. If they still dispute this, I would challenge their leadership to take a lie detector test.
Look, this isn't the Maury Povich show, okay? This is state government. That's just a sideshow, and I'm not going to go down the road of playing games like that. He's an attorney, I'm an attorney. We all know those things aren't even admissible.
And that is where we're at now when it comes to North Carolina politics. Should the people of North Carolina expect more out of our leaders than now getting to the point of calling for a lie detector tests? Because trust has been so violated at this point and broken down so much that we're now at that point.
Well, I think it would be interesting for the public to have a lot of politicians take lie detector tests, don't you?
Sure.
I think it would show a whole lot of things.
A lot of politicians that'd be really worried.
Yeah, there might be some people just drop out of politics if they had to take a lie detector test. So I find that kind of humorous. The thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, without the dozen or so Democrats that were there that morning, if they would have walked out, which we were actually praying, seriously, literally praying, please don't let them leave, we couldn't have done it because we wouldn't have had a majority. They stayed and kind of lost their cool and forgot where they were, in my opinion, and stayed and voted. And because of that, it validated it because you got to have 61 and we only had 55.
Yeah, and there's kind of some dispute on how the quorum rules actually work. It's not clear in the House rules that we passed in January, and also not clear in Mason's manual, which we use to determine our rules of procedure, exactly if all the Democrats had ran out, would that have broken quorum? Some people believe that if, as the gavel was hit and whoever was in the room, that establishes quorum, and whether they come and go, which we all often do during session, that doesn't break quorum when we're doing it at other times. And as far as the lie detector tests go, Representative Jackson's integrity has been called into question repeatedly over and over. And I understand where he's coming from because he's an attorney and he's a leader in the Democratic Party, and he has been doing the best that he can possibly do for our caucus. And it's it's pretty offensive to call his integrity into question over and over, and that's why I think he felt the need to stand up and say, I'm willing to do this because I know what I believe is right.
Got to get in a commercial break here in a second, but where do we go from here? How do we restore the working relationship and trust between the two parties now in Raleigh?
Well, it was kind of ironic that same day, that afternoon, we actually had two bills. Of course, they were non-controversial, and we voted unanimous, which we were kind of shocked on our side, thinking, well, they're mad today. They're not going to vote unanimous, but we did. Yeah. But I'm not going to tell you that there's not a crack. There's not a crevice. I'm hoping maybe if this budget does go forward and get approved. If it don't, I think the crack will stay there. I ain't saying it's going to cure it if we do get it approved, but maybe we can start to work on other things that we agree on.
What do you think it's going to take on your side?
I have to give credit where credit is due to Representative McNeely. He called me that night after the vote, and he was kind of gauging how angry I was, and he made a fair point, which is we have to figure out how to move forward because we have to do work for the state, and we can't just leave it in this state of turmoil. But the trust has been broken, and it's going to be kind of a hard road to get back on that path of where we have faith and trust in each other and what's going to happen. And
you owe it to the people of North Carolina to
yes,
somehow get past this. All right, more Flashpoint after this.